We'll get straight into the topic today, which is any and every updates around the birthright citizenship.
There was a proclamation order by President Trump where he basically said, hey, I'm going to be limiting birthright citizenship. So everybody got freaked out, everybody got really concerned, and then a bunch of lawsuits happened.
For families who are concerned about these discussions, do you have a top piece of advice before we close out?
Don't panic. Take the time to first digest the information, right? Don't take the first headline as fact. Do your research and also talk to relevant counsel.
If I am someone who is on a visa today and I have a child, does that mean that the child is a US citizen?
As of right now, today's date, things are changing every day, every hour. Even today, there's going to be another conversation about it.
Hi everyone, this is Priya from It's Okay Yaar, and with me I have Nicole from the Manifest Law Firm. All details are in the description box so you can check it out. But we'll get straight into the topic today, which is any and every updates around the birthright citizenship. Today we are creating this video on July 18th, 2025. I'm saying this because it's an ongoing situation and there are very fast developments, so it's important for you to know when this video was created. As and when there are more updates, we will be sure to keep you posted. But with that, Nicole, there is a lot that has happened around the space from the beginning of the year. I think what would be really helpful for this group who's tuning in today would be to understand what is it that has happened so far, what changed, and what is the current status today on July 18th, 2025.
Absolutely. So I'm going to tell you that it's a very long summary, but let me try my best to condense it. There were a lot of filings. Even for a legal practitioner for myself, like the number of flurry of filings, injunctions, complaints, and opinions left and right, it's actually very hard to keep track of, right? But let's start from the very beginning. There was a proclamation order by President Trump where he basically said, hey, I'm going to be limiting birthright citizenship. So instead of a scenario where any person who is born in the United States, regardless of like kind of how they came to the US, it's just if you're born in the United States, they will get US citizenship. Essentially, he's saying, hey, I'm going to roll that back. I'm going to limit it and essentially prevent two sets of individuals, right, from garnering birthright citizenship. We'll talk about that more in detail on who qualifies, who doesn't qualify if this order does come through. But that was the start of it, this proclamation. Everybody got freaked out, everybody got really concerned, and then a bunch of lawsuits happened. Whether it's individual states or on a federal level, there were a lot of lawsuits that basically said, hey, you can't do that. Constitutionally speaking, it's a protected right. If you are born in the United States, you are given citizenship. It's written right there in the Constitution, right? But in terms of like what is happening right now, right? What is happening in the news right now is that the Supreme Court did hear the case, right? But it didn't focus on birthright citizenship. It actually focused more on whether or not judges can trigger nationwide injunctions, right? So to take one step back from that, what is an injunction? An injunction is where the judge basically says, hey, we're going to temporarily stop this, or we're going to temporarily stop an action because it will damage too many people or it will affect too many people until there is a final resolution. Right? So basically after Trump did the proclamation order, there were all these lawsuits and judges basically issued injunctions saying, you know, Trump, you can't do this for now until we figure this out, and it makes it all the way up to the court. So the Supreme Court basically said, judges, you can't really keep doing this. You can't keep issuing these nationwide injunctions unless it is in certain exceptions, and one of those big exceptions is a class action lawsuit. Right? So that was the Supreme Court decision that occurred on June 27th, right? And the impact of June 27th and that decision was that, okay, if there weren't any kind of class action lawsuits or there weren't any certain types of injunctions, then the state that doesn't have those things happening will now have restrictions on birthright citizenship. Then the next thing that happened, forgive me, a lot of flurrying, right, is that on July 10th, 2025, a federal judge basically said, you know what, these unborn babies or these babies that would be impacted are now considered a class of their own. So now class action lawsuits can come in and all of these injunctions can now happen again. So that's what happened in July 10th. You get a breathing of a sigh of relief because now even if you're in all of these other states that don't have these local and state kind of lawsuits going on, right, birthright citizenship is still back in play, right? And then today we even have an update. Now the thing is, today on July 18th, it isn't that there's a decision just yet. There may be one. A group of Democratic attorneys, in addition to representatives of certain states, have essentially approached a federal judge. His name is Judge Sorokin. To issue another block, a second block, to further kind of remove from the ability of the president to immediately enforce this particular proclamation, right? We don't have the results of that just yet. It might be actually honestly coming out very, very soon. But the reality is that there's going to be another discussion today with another federal judge, and there will be more news coming out. So what does this mean for everybody? Right now, everything's kind of still on pause, right? The birthright citizenship is still a thing, but the people who should really be worried the most are individuals who are in states that are without orders, right? Without any kind of blockings whatsoever. The biggest ones, Texas, Florida, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Utah, right? Those are probably the states that are most at risk with everything that's going on at the moment.
Got it. No, that's super helpful. And I think you mentioned that it's a situation where there might be more updates later today. So if that happens, we will cover that for sure. But just to be clear, like, if I am someone who is on a visa today and I have a child here in the United States and the child is born in the United States, does that mean that the child is a US citizen?
As of
In the
right
current
now,
Yeah.
right now, today's date, yes, right?
As of July 18, 2025, they are, yes, okay, perfect. What does this mean if I am a green card holder? And does this birthright citizenship also impact green card holders and other US citizens who recently received their citizenship?
The answer is, as of right now, no, it has no impact, right? But I really think that what we should be focusing on more, right, is let's say the proclamation does become true, right? Let's say all of the injunctions fall apart. One day the Supreme Court just says, yes, there is a right to limit birthright citizenship, or like the laws changed, right? I'm really like far reaching here and making like a very specific hypothetical, right? I want to make clear what the proclamation is limited, right? So essentially the proclamation says the individuals who do not qualify for birthright citizenship are babies who are born in the United States in this first scenario, right, to an undocumented mother, right, so someone who is not lawfully in the United States, and a father who is not a US citizen or green card holder, right? So what does this mean? So even if you are a baby who is born to an undocumented mother, if that undocumented mother happened to have a father of that child who is a US citizen, who is a green card holder, that child is still a US citizen, right? So that's what I want to make clear. The second category of individuals who cannot get birthright citizenship are individuals who are born to a temporary visitor mother. So people on non-immigrant visas, people who are here on a B1, B2, right? And a father who is not a citizen and a US green card holder, right? So again, making it clear. So what is the thin line that the government is drawing? If neither parent is a US citizen, right, then your child is not going to be a citizen. Is not going to be a citizen. If neither parent is a green card holder, then your child is not going to be a citizen, right? So that's what I want to make clear. It's really only these two classes of individuals. So the reason why immigrants are so worried is because if you are here in the United States on an H-1B visa and your spouse is here on an H-4 visa and you give birth to a child here in the United States, that child is no longer going to be a US citizen. They're going to be another dependent, and I don't even know how the organization of this is going to work. Do you have to immediately file for an H-4 status for the child? Do you file a 539 from what, right?
And then what passport will the child hold? Because I don't know how that would work. Anyway, I think thank you for clarifying and making it super, super clear that what happens. I think the question here then comes to when it comes to altering this birthright citizenship, which holds more weight? Is it the congressional action or executive changes or some of the injunctions? Like, what is it that needs to happen that this will actually become true?
I mean, if it was congressional action and they actually passed it into law with like a super majority, then of course it's going to change. Like that would be amending the Constitution. If they amended the Constitution and it passed, then that's it. We amended the Constitution, right? The litigation is also going.
But one second, what does it take to amend the constitution, right? Like that's my question. Like how many, like is it like someone signs an executive order and it gets him, like what happens?
Yeah, no, there would need to be a bill submitted into Congress, right? It's like the same way as any changes in the law like occur. A bill is submitted, it goes through the House of Representatives, the representatives vote on it, and then if it's approved, then it goes to the Senate. If that's approved, then it goes to the president to sign, right? But constitutional amendments require a super majority. So instead of a majority vote, you need a 2/3 vote in order for it to pass. That's why it's very hard to amend the Constitution. That's why the Bill of Rights occurred like ages ago, and we haven't really made constitutional amendments too much since then, right? It's a very rare occasion, and considering how split Congress is at the moment, I don't really see it happening that way, but that is one way that it could be done, that there's not really much that can be countered from that point.
So 2/3 majority, and then making sure that the entire process of approvals happen. So I understand what you're talking about, not having that majority, harder, etc. Say for some reason we go through that process and it actually happens. What is the timeline for that? Is it like a year, 2 years, like, or it can take 5, or it can happen in like 2 months? Like, what is a rough timeline?
So I will tell you that I'm not a constitutional lawyer.
Okay,
I am not
okay,
a lawyer,
that's fine.
not a
That's
federal
fine.
lawyer, but I will tell you it will take a long time for it to happen, right? Bills take a really long time. There's an active negotiation. Like a super majority is exceptionally rare. Like exceptionally rare. Constitutional amendments have not happened in I think like 50 or 60 years.
Ooh. Okay, no, that's super helpful. I was just making sure that I at least ask, but thanks for clarifying that. I think before we wrap up this segment, I think the last piece of question that I have for you is for families who are concerned about these discussions. Do you have a top piece of advice before we close out?
So my top piece of advice is don't immediately panic, right? Because like I mentioned at the start of this conversation, this is actually a lot of legalese even for myself as an attorney. Like, look at my reaction when Priya was asking me about how long do you think it would take for a supermajority and everything like that. Even for me as a practitioner, I'm sitting there like, there's a lot of concepts going on at the same time. There's a lot of lawsuits and there's a lot of different areas of law. You're talking about constitutionality. You're talking about federal levels of litigation and even state levels of litigation, right? And the concept of a class action lawsuit as well, right? So don't panic. Take the time to first digest the information, right? Don't take the first headline as fact. Do your research and also talk to relevant counsel, right? Talk to an immigration attorney if you have access to one, or at least wait until there's developments and an actual explanation that could be provided to you so you can better understand what's actually happening. Like Priya said, things are changing every day, every hour. Even today, there's going to be another conversation about it.
Thank you so much. I hope this was all super helpful for anyone who's tuning in. Again, all the details about manifest law is in the description box, so check it out. If things aren't going your way, remember it's okay, Yaar, because they will eventually turn around. With that, this is Priya and Nicole signing off, and we'll be back with another video. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.